Hey, deserving listeners, it's time for me to react to your comments from my videos from last week. Let's get to it. Ed and Rose Bears All episode posted last week. Good old Hoop Gene says, Ed's taking of responsibility at this point does come off to me as impression management because he doesn't seem to do a lot of soul searching after each incident. Agreed, Hoop Gene. Ida says, I think Rose is honest when she says she is happy that they have met. She has a YouTube channel now. She worked as a model, and I saw that she bought a new farm and a new shop for her family. I didn't know that. I always love it when people give me some updates on people. That's great. Presumably because of the notoriety of being on this show, that it might have completely changed things around for her and her family and her kid. Maybe she could get her kid back, right? So even though it was an emotional roller coaster for her and probably ultimately harmful to her, maybe overall in her life, she benefited from it, which is great. I hadn't considered that. It's like she's like potentially much better off now. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like. Darcy, Alicia says, Florian, this is this the Bears All as well? I'm not sure. Alicia says, Florian looks like a child whose mom dressed him up and dragged him to an adult party and he's bored because there's no other kids to play with. Yeah. Jennifer says, for my husband and I, it was simple. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and it was so. In this episode, there was talk about the ambiguity of, were we on a break or were we not on a break? And frequently this is a theme on 90 Day Fiancé. For my husband and I, it was simple. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and it was official. When we broke up at one point, it was also official. I don't understand why it is challenging to say things clearly. Yeah, well, yes, and I think there are reasons that people can get into ambiguous situations, insecurity, they're confused. If you've ever been through a long-term relationship and then you're starting to contemplate leaving, there's a lot of confusion. At times you're like, yeah, I'm done. Other times you're like, well, maybe not. And then maybe you say, I think we should take a break, but I don't want to lose you because what if this is a big mistake? And so I think people can be very obscure in their communication because of that. It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't make it mature. Clem says, Darcy is a chaser because of her desperation, so she probably kept reaching out to Tom. So Clem is talking about how there was that, was it a break or was it not a break? Darcy is a chaser because of her desperation, so she probably kept reaching out to Tom after they were split. Tom was lonely and not sure about his ex-girlfriend, so he got into casually texting with Darcy, and he was enjoying the attention. Also, I would guess he's not actually that good at reaching out to people. This, to Darcy, meant they are together, and to Tom, it meant a casual chat. I think people nowadays have a lot of relationships like this where they are talking to people all day and think nothing of it, but actually the other person thinks you're their closest confidant. Yeah, absolutely. This is something I've seen in modern times where people might have one friend that they reach out to, or a very small set, and it's primarily over texting. And to the other person, you're just one of 50 people that they text with during the day, and it could be very confusing because some people are very prolific and frequent texters. I have a cousin, Mandy, actually, who has been on the podcast before. Maybe not so much anymore, but back in the day, it just seemed like she had her phone out at all times and was texting with me and probably 100 other people, all day long. And so when I would text with her, it was immediate, and we'd have these quick back and forths during the day. And whereas other people, they might text one person once a week or something. So I think that it can lead to confusion because when you spend time with people, it's like you spend an evening with someone. It really defines where you stand in their life because they're willing to set aside 5 hours on a Friday night for you. Whereas setting aside a portion of their texting efforts, you might not know what that means to the other person. Maybe it can get confusing, and maybe that was part of the reason why Tom and Darcy didn't understand where they were at. I was also thinking that some of the people on the show, because, they know they're being watched, not only by the cameras and the crew, but also by the world. And so it makes me wonder if some of these folks are thinking, well, what if I, like when Tom reached out to Avery, for example, of Avery and Ash, Tom must have known, but, he did that before the tell-all. He must have known there was a risk that was going to come up. So did he do that knowing that it would come up, and he was hoping that it would come up? It was to show like, yeah, I'm moving on and I'm a ladies' man. Like, that's right. Then he's like, yeah, it really challenges my persona of I'm a ladies' man. I'm like, who sees him as a ladies' man? But anyway, maybe in his circle he is. But anyway, so when they're still reaching out, Darcy and Jesse, or there's just all this talk about when Ed and Rose were arguing, like, you reached out to me, no, you reached out to. It just makes you wonder, like, what is really going on. Because it wouldn't be unusual after a breakup for someone to reach out. They've had a couple drinks and they're just like, oh, I kind of miss that person. I want to connect. It's normal. Or I'm angry at that person. I want to tell them. Or I really miss that person even when I'm sober. Or I just want to be friends. I just want to reach out. So, but somehow it becomes this binary between you're either this desperate loser who's reaching out to an ex, or you're, I don't know, it just gets worded in these ways like that. I wish, like when Tom and Darcy are talking about how they were texting after a breakup or something, you texted me, she was texting me all the time. It's like, okay, so you dated and you were basically almost engaged, and after the breakup, they still wanted to talk. What's the big deal? Or they had moments that they missed you. That's human. But somehow it's this incredible disgrace, and it's like so humiliating that, Tom would just say like, oh, Darcy she was texting me all the time. And I'm just like, are we 13? Come on, people. Stephanie bears all. She says, Bubbles says, Dr. Honda, I genuinely have so much platonic love for you. Your analysis swept through me like a blade. Oh, that's a metaphor. I really relate to feeling unlovable. You are a beautiful voice in my head. Thank you. Oh, well, Bubbles, I'm glad that you're able to feel validated, and I'm sorry that you feel unlovable. That was taught to you. Of course you're not unlovable. You were shown that by people from the outside. And what I'll say is that it probably wasn't intentional. I don't know your history, but often when we have unlovable schemas, it's usually just a byproduct of mistakes and stress that parents are going through, which is, really unfortunate. And I hope, and it sounds like you're aware of that, which is great. It's like half the battle right there. So hopefully you're getting corrective experiences showing you that you are lovable so that you can change that schema. Missed Noah's Ark says, I thought I was asexual for a bit. I had no libido, no sex drive. I even thought sex was gross, like a kid, ew. Turns out once I escaped my partner who was abusing me, it came back. Yeah, absolutely. Lack of libido can have a lot of different causes. And sometimes it's one's orientation or one's being, meaning you're asexual or demisexual. Sometimes it's physical, hormones. Sometimes it absolutely is relational and situational, which it sounds like it was for you. Alaya says, I'm trying to listen to Dr. Honda's kind insights about Stephanie's lyrics, because Stephanie was singing her song and I was trying to read into her lyrics about, when she said, me too, I don't understand why people would love me either. I'm trying to listen to Dr. Honda's kind insights about Stephanie's lyrics, but man, that song is distractingly rough to listen to. It's no Maida by Bread Knife Incident, which is one of my faves. Oh, thanks a lot. Brandon and Julia on Bears All. Kim says, I get annoyed with the attitudes people have about adult sons and them living with their parents. My 3 adult sons live at home while studying and all working 2 jobs. They are not on the titty. We did not have the finances to fund their education, so they stay at home and they work and they pay for their own education. Yeah, absolutely. Kids, this show has... There are certain tropes that 90 Day Fiancé just really commits to. And I'm pretty sure they do that because those tropes are and those ideas are in our culture, and so they know they know what buttons to push. And one of them is on the titty or the mama's boy trope, which, as you know from my videos, I do not go along with. Can there be codependency? Can there be dependency? Can there be enmeshment? Absolutely. Can there be overfunctioning, underfunctioning? Absolutely. But this idea that if you're a 35-year-old man and you still live with your mom, there's something like terribly wrong with you and you're basically like a child or a girl or something is just like really gross and silly. It's like, let it go, people. People can live where they want to live. You know, you have to look at their lives. Plus, living away from your parents doesn't mean you don't have enmeshment or codependency or dependency, right? It's like the age difference thing, which I want to point out. No one talks, or I don't see anyone commenting about Kenny and Armando's age difference. You know, they have a pretty big gap, but no one talks about it because they're a good couple, and plus, I think everyone loves them. If you don't like someone, like what was another age difference? God, there's so many. Why aren't any coming to my mind? Was Lisa and Usman, were they a big age difference? God, why can't any come to mind? I have to pause this because this is embarrassing. Of course, Big Ed and Rose, or Ed and Liz, often talked about. And I think their age difference might not be as, or maybe similar to Kenny and Armando. And it just really shows that people aren't really concerned about the age difference. They just don't like certain people, and they'll just grab certain things to justify their hatred of someone. And that's fine, but you don't want to grab things that don't make any sense, you know, like racism or something, or ableism, or the way someone looks. Like, you shouldn't hate someone because of the way they look, you know, or their hair or something, or even the way they style their hair. You know, you can dislike it, but you know, what if Kenny put mayonnaise in his hair? I mean, we don't know what Kenny puts in his hair, right? I mean, it's probably not mayonnaise. It's probably, you know. Anyway, point is when I've you know, it's interesting as I watch people watch these shows, basically, you know, and read the comments, and so I'm part of the community, and I've just been observing the community, and I've just noticed that some people just really trigger people, you know, the Eds and the Stephen and Alina. There's just certain people that really just torque people, and because there are people that are arguably more problematic than them, like in terms of like criminal degree. Someone like Jeffrey, for example, the stuff that he allegedly did is like way beyond things that you could accuse Ed or especially Stephen of doing. And yet the amount of visceral like anger and rage that some of these characters produce in people is fine. You know, it's entertainment. That's why it's on there. But it's interesting to watch that. And then because as a therapist, we're all supposed to be very aware of being triggered by our clients. And, you know, if Stephen walks into my office, or Ed walks into my office, or for that matter, Jeffrey walks into my office, I have to be able to bond with them. I have to be able to help them. I have to be able to get them to like me. I have to like them. I have to positive. If I'm going to change them, if they're asking me for help, I have to bond with them. So I don't really, and a long time ago, I gave up the luxury of hating people. And so anyway, it's just been interesting to see that, and then to watch how people justify their anger at certain people. and what they will justify in terms of, it's like once someone is decidedly hated, then all the ugliness of human nature comes out towards that person. And it's like, no, you can't make fun of, I don't know, let's say a person. You can't make fun of, you can't make fun of Kenny for crying, right? No one makes fun of Kenny crying, as far as I know, and you shouldn't, obviously. But no one makes fun of, when Kenny cries, no one's just like, oh, poor baby, But someone else cries, and an Ed or a Steven or, one of the hated people, and people will just like pile on. Not everyone, and I'm sure not you, but people, the majority of comments that I see, not necessarily in my channel, but other channels and other places, and emails and stuff. And I challenge that, because I think that inconsistency and that hypocrisy, for that matter, breeds this culture of, it's not okay to do that to these people, but it is okay to do it. It's a stark example is, we all understand racism is bad, right? Like, I don't want to say, racist common beliefs or statements that people will say, but y'all know them. You can't look at one person and because you like them and say, well, don't be racist to that person, and then another person that you hate and it's okay to be racist to that. No, we all understand it's not okay, right? But racism is just one of the isms. It's just one of the oppressive tools of the patriarchy. And there are many others that we have even yet to identify publicly. Academics and therapists, we spend a lot of time looking at research and identifying these things. And so that's why when I see people making fun of people's bodies, people making fun of their intelligence, for that matter, people making fun of other kinds of things, that it's not okay to make fun of anyone. Even if you hate someone, you can hate them for their behavior. You can hate Jeffrey if the allegations are true that he has committed domestic violence crimes and other rage and abusive behaviors, kinds of things. And so you can say that's despicable. Okay. But to make fun of his tattoos or to make fun of his hair or the way he looks or something, that's not okay. You can't, it sets a bad trend. It basically says, this is okay. And when you say that's okay, one, people are being harmed, that it doesn't make sense. Two, it can come back to you. Like, you start making fun of someone's body, that comes back around, or someone starts making fun of someone else. If you have kids, if you create a culture, that's another thing to think about, is when you are watching the show, if your kids are around, be very careful about the things that you say, because your kids are paying attention. And you don't want your kids to learn like, she says it's not okay to make fun of someone's sexuality, or she says it's not okay to make fun of someone's demeanor or their hair or something, but she does make fun of those things. So that's one of those rules that they say, but it's not really supposed to be followed, Anyway, I know that all this that I'm saying can completely ruin the enjoyment of the show. I'm pretty sure a lot of people watch these shows just to hate a lot of the people. And so and I've said this from the beginning, it's possible that my, the way that I watch it, if everyone watched it the way that I watch it, no one would enjoy it. But I want to fight against all mechanisms of the patriarchy and all mechanisms of oppressive power, not just the ones that we typically march about in the streets. Danielle and Muhammad video, political troll, good old political troll, says, this lady, Danielle, treats him like a piece of meat. I think Muhammad has problems for sure, but it's hard to watch someone get treated like this. Absolutely. Courtney says, I once had an ex that always made me look terrible in public. He knew exactly how to act to set me off. He was abusive behind closed doors, and then I looked abusive in public, and it really messed with my head. Sometimes the look on Muhammad's face triggers me back to those moments. So basically, Courtney is saying, She doesn't know, but maybe Muhammad is very good at manipulating Danielle to presenting in a very volatile way in front of the cameras, and then Muhammad in front of the cameras is very good at being able to present himself. It's hard to know with those two, honestly. But clearly we see Danielle with some very concerning behaviors. Jenny and Summit, Rebecca says, I just love the mental image of Dr. Honda trying to think of a name for the episode and then just deciding on ugh. Yeah, so every episode that I make, I put a little title in it just to kind of differentiate it a little bit. And yeah, there's always this moment like, okay, what do I call this one? And then with this Jenny and Summit one, I just like, ugh. Norberta says, I think your hypothesis about Summit's intentionally seeking out a doomed-to-fail relationship is the strongest hypothesis. I can imagine that growing up with his mom may have had some miserable moments, and he may think that's just what marriage is. So now he's trying to fulfill his attachment needs with a relationship that cannot result in marriage. Yeah, maybe. Good old Run Lola Run says, Summit's magical thinking, past traumatic experiences, and pathological lying are a painful combo for Jenny to have to deal with. Jenny deserves so much better. Thanks for the pathological lying analysis and identification too, because it is really confusing to watch him. It's like he is different people at times and just keeps changing and changing. Agreed. Lesego says, does Summit want to date Jenny for a little longer without all the other villains in the way? Now that everyone approves, maybe they should try being together without being married. See what that's like without other people in the way. This may be one of the few times I agree with Summit. I think they should hold off on marriage. Interesting. Ariela and Biniam. Stacy says, Ari has a ton of cuts on her arms in earlier scenes. You can particularly notice them in her first episode at her prenatal class. She has since admitted to self-harming. Maybe this explains her situation a lot more. Stacy, if this is true, thank you for pointing this out to me, because we can't know and I can't diagnose from afar. But what I'll say is that, not what we call non-suicidal self-injury. Sometimes people call cutting or self-abuse, but in the clinical literature, it's non-suicidal self-injury. It's a complicated thing, and it has a few different paths that lead to that behavior. But a real common path is when someone and I've treated many people with this, when you have intense emotions and pain, distress from feeling abandoned, feeling hurt by other people, feeling ashamed, and you just have like deep, if you've never had this, then you don't know what it feels like. But for those of you who have, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like unbridled shame and distress and confusion, and it lasts for a long time. And when people have this repetitive experience, obviously people are going to look for ways to soothe themselves, right? We might look to substances, and that will numb us. It will ultimately cause more problems than it fixes, but it will temporarily sometimes numb us. We might turn to sexuality. We might turn to gambling or spending or some kind of compulsion. But another thing that some people will land on is cutting, and by the way, this might be triggering for those who are going through recovery on non-suicidal self-injury, so you might want to fast forward 5 or 10 minutes. Seriously, because it can trigger people. It is a compulsion. It's like an eating disorder or cocaine addiction or something that some people will discover either randomly or learning from other kids at school, that when they cut or when they hurt themselves or burn themselves or punch something or pull their hair, they don't feel as much pain. They don't feel as much distress as they're doing it and after they do it. There's a number of different neurological reasons for this. One is that when you get really focused on something, because when you cut, people aren't trying to kill themselves. That's why they call it non-suicidal self-injury. And so you have to be very careful. You can't go too deep. And so people will be very heavily concentrating. And when you're concentrating, you kind of forget your pain because you're not focused on it anymore. The other thing that happens is when you feel pain or when you see that you're bleeding, your brain sends all these neurochemicals into your brain to counteract the pain, because we evolved, seemingly, and many other animals as well, that when we get injured, we can't really focus on it in the moment. If a tiger comes after us and like scratches our leg, we can't really focus on that pain. We got to run. And so the brain says, let's not deal with the pain right now. Let me give you some nice, feelings so that you'll feel the pain later, but for now, let's flood with endorphins and all these things. And so it's this natural high that you can get from pain. It doesn't happen for everyone, and there's various different ways to get here. Like I said, through pain or danger, adrenaline. Some say that horror movies actually can do this. And you'll find that people that suffer from a lot of these kinds of emotions are attracted to horror movies sometimes for various reasons. I think partially for this, but when you cut it, all these chemicals flood the brain, and it's akin to heroin or morphine. And what happens is, not only does it shut down the pain of the cut, but it shuts down all pain, including emotional pain. And then all of a sudden, for the first time, the person, the 16-year-old or the 13-year-old or the 35-year-old is like, oh. Now they're kind of numb. They're not really productive in those moments, but they get a little bit of relief from the emotional pain that's happening all the time. And then it becomes addictive, right? Because that feeling, you're just like, oh, I want more and more and more of that. So with Ariela, if she has a history of non-suicidal self-injury, which Stacy is saying she's admitted to that, it didn't happen on the show. That must have happened outside of the show. But if that's true, then that adds to the conceptualization, the hypothesis I have about her, about attachment distress, severe attachment distress, and semi-delusional reactivity to what's happening in reality. That there's a trigger of, he didn't text me back. And then, boom, big time distress, like abandonment traumas just come flooding in, and all the pain of abandonment and all the pain. And in the past, the way she dealt with this is through cutting. And maybe she still does, we don't know. Along those lines, I am terrified that one of these people are going to attempt suicide or complete suicide, because a lot of these people are in severe distress, and it's no joke. And we don't know the history, and we can't depend on 90 Day Fiancé to do proper screening of these people. I mean, how could they? And plus, they're looking for people that are high drama, I'm guessing. So I'm terrified that at some point, one of these folks is going to die, and all of us are going to have to look at ourselves in terms of how we participated in it, because we know that these individuals are not just being under distress because of the individuals we see them interacting with on the show, but we know that the internet is extremely horrible to these people. And I'm terrified that someone, Ariela, someone else, I'm trying to think who else seems, I don't know Stephanie's story. Obviously, she seems okay, but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't suffer from depression at times. Tim actually seems possibly depressed. I don't know if I've posted those yet, but I went back to react to him because I know he's going to be on Dating Life, or no, because Jennifer's going to be on Dating Life or Single Life or whatever that show's called. So yeah, I'm really worried about it, and I don't know what to do about it other than to say, I don't know what to do. I mean, what can I do? I guess other than to say that if any of you have contact with the cast members, to be nice and to try to encourage them to get help when they need it. So getting back to Ari, it's possible that, so I was wondering, because she seemed to, I can't know, I don't know if Biniam is cheating or not, but if Biniam is not cheating, which is possible, it's quite possible, then we have to wonder what's happening with Ari. And if she does have a history of non-suicidal self-injury, that would absolutely fit within my hypothesis about what trauma she has and what emotional experiences she's going through on a daily basis. That she's not just like making it up in her mind, like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna be annoying. It's deep, deep shame and pain and emptiness and worthlessness and desperation, and it's real. Denicia says, my sister-in-law is Ethiopian, and I asked her opinion about the baby in the crowd at the festival. She said, there's a reason why you don't see other small babies in the crowd. No one wants a newborn sprayed with a water cannon. It was incredibly irresponsible. That is interesting. That makes sense to me. Ariela and Biniam, another video. Angela says, Ari has said she would leave him, but multiple times she's also said that they'd work out a custody arrangement if they do split. She claims to have no intention of keeping the baby from him if she leaves the relationship. Yeah, but, and who knows what her intentions are, but if they did split, I can't see a scenario outside of he's in Ethiopia and maybe sees the kid a week out of every 3 years. And I guess occasional Zoom meetings or something. Because the only way for it to work where he actually has access to his child in any kind of meaningful way is if she stays living in Ethiopia, or somehow he gets a visa to come out to the United States. And if they split, because they're not married yet, right? So how could he get a visa to come out? And why didn't that happen the first time with his first wife that came back to the States? So although I agree, Angela, that she intends on trying to make it right, I think she also knows that she has all the power and she can be kind of flippant about that scenario because she'll know she'll have access to the child. Whereas for him, he's, I'm sure he's just like, I hope that she allows me access to my child, So anyway. Alejandra says, I really appreciate your videos. After watching any of them, I find myself wanting to be more in tune with my feelings and be a better communicator with my partner. I'm not perfect, but I do find myself wondering how you would analyze my behavior on occasion, and I'm getting a little better at understanding my emotions. Thank you for all you do. Well, Alejandra, that is wonderful to hear. Thank you for that. Yeah, people say that sometimes, and I'm used to that as a professor, a mentor, supervisor, and therapist. And I have my mentors that are in my head that I'm in other people's heads, and so hopefully it's a good thing, I suppose. I can imagine a situation of just like, okay, I'm in a fight with my partner right now. Okay, what would Dr. Honda tell me to do? Slow down. Primary emotions. Where am I in pain and where am I afraid? How am I hurting? How did this person hurt my feelings? And why am I afraid of losing them? That's almost always what's happening at the baseline. And how can I speak from that instead of getting angry or dismissive or something else? Anyway, I'm wearing this shirt in honor of good old Michelle that died not too long ago. You can buy that on the merch thing below if you want. Whenever I wear this shirt, I always get a lot of comments, which is kind of fun, but also a little annoying because it's like everyone wants to talk about it. I don't know what it is about. Stacy, the podwife, actually painted this. It's a painting in my bathroom, and she took a scan of it and made it into a shirt. So it's a much more actual, painting with paint, whatever, art stuff. Anyway, everyone out there, please take care of yourself and let your cats chime in when they want to, because you deserve it and your cats deserve it. They really, really do.